It is a day we've been waiting for quite some time now, the start of the 2021 college football season, and today we're going to go over the Boise State Broncos against the UCF Golden Knights in Orlando on September 2nd. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited for college football to be back. Let's get into it. Again, September 2nd in Orlando, so that's the first question mark. Will Boise State be able to get it done on the road in the East? If you remember, they did so against Florida State in 2019. Willie Taggart, anybody recall that name just a little bit? They were down 31-19 in that game in Tallahassee. It was the first game of the season, just like this one is. Ended up going on a 17-0 run in the second half, winning that game 36-31. So there is no doubt that Boise State can get it done in the East. But this is against a little bit better of a foe here, a team that was 6-4 last season for Central Florida, but very easily could have been 7-3, 8-2, 9-1. They had three very close, down to the wire games that all three went against them. That was Tulsa, Memphis, Cincinnati. So this UCF team, obviously very good, but didn't necessarily get up to par last season. Now that's okay. That's 2020. It's a shortened season. The Broncos, mind you, were 4-2 or 5-2 last season in a shortened season. Just 7 games for them. Both needed some time under their belt, for sure. The new head coach, Andy Avalos, comes in as a first-year head coach for the Broncos. He was the defensive coordinator there from 2016 to 2018. In that time, if you'll recall, Boise State's defense, a bit more of an attacking style, a lot more aggressive, and a lot better in general than what they were last season. We'll go over that in full detail shortly. But yes, he's a very defensive-minded person, obviously, and if he's going to be a first-year head coach, he is in quite the situation to do so. 16 returning starters from last year's team if you're the Boise State Broncos, and a lot of those guys in very, very key positions. One of those positions, the quarterback position, Hank Bachmeier figures to be the starter, although he will have some pressure on him, as one-time USC transfer quarterback Jack Sears played in 3 games last season, went 23 for 27 in those affairs. He's a very talented quarterback and figures to give Hank Bachmeier every little bit of his money's worth in terms of that quarterback race. He's very, very good, and they really can't go wrong with either guy. The knock on Hank Bachmeier for the longest time has been his inconsistency. When he's good, man, he is really, really good, but when he's not, he's not. That is the definition of inconsistency. However, he does have an amazing receiving corps to throw to, most notably led by Khalil Shakir, who had 52 catches last season, which was more than the next 3 guys on the team combined. So that sounds bad, sounds like the rest of the corps is not as talented, but it very much is. It just goes to show how good Shakir is. 52 catches in just 7 games last year. It was like 719 yards and 6 touchdowns. Shakir, very quick, very elusive. When he gets the ball in open space, man, you better watch out, because he sees a gap and he runs through it and gets to where he needs to go. Has a knack for the end zone. Again, 6 touchdowns last season in 7 games. He can catch the ball downfield. He can do a lot to take the top off the defense, and I think he's going to do a lot in this game. We'll also talk about that here shortly. The offensive line for Boise State, though, however, is a big, big question mark. They returned 4 guys. That sounds great. That sounds awesome, in fact. The problem is they had their worst running back output, or running yards output per game, since 1993. I have my stats here. I'm not going to act like a complete know-it-all. I just did my research. And they're going to return George Holani at running back. He was a 1,000-yard rusher in 2019, but last season he had just 19 carries on the 2020 season because he was injured. So They struggled on the offensive line, and they struggled without Helani. That average that was the worst since 1993 was 107.1 yards per game and just 3.3 yards per carry. That is not going to get it done in Orlando, in my opinion, against that UCF defense. It's going to be tough, especially when you're talking about going against the UCF offense and trying to outscore them. But we'll get into that. We'll see if they can actually make it happen. Boise State led the Mountain West last season with 33.9 points per game. They obviously can get it done on the offensive end. They are very excited. A very exciting team to watch. They'll be up against that UCF defense, obviously. The UCF defense, very similar to Boise State's defense. We'll talk about that more as well. But both teams so incredibly thin in the secondary. UCF losing 3 of their 4 starters from last season, most notably a 3-time first-team All-AAC safety in Richie Grant. He was a stud. It's going to take a lot to replace him, obviously. And when you're talking about going against Bachmeier and Shakir and a very good receiving corps for Boise State, that's obviously a problem. You don't want to be thin in the secondary. They have had some transfers from Georgia and Nebraska come in. That's good news. Those are from Power 5 schools. In fact, both of these teams did a very good job in the transfer portal in terms of getting players from big schools. So we'll see how that pans out for them. Defensive line acquires Big Cat Bryant, a former All-SEC lineman with Auburn, and Ricky Barber Jr., who was a freshman All-American at Western Kentucky. So Big Cat Bryant from Auburn, obviously. Gus Malzahn now at UCF. He got a few Auburn transfers, and that is one of them. You gotta like having an All-SEC guy there. That should help out a lot in a UCF defensive line that was a little bit thin in terms of depth last season. Linebackers are the most experienced here for UCF. Eric Gilliard and Tatum Bethune were 2nd and 3rd in tackling last year. UCF is favored by 4 points in this game. I went over the Boise State offense, the UCF defense. The running game should be improved with the return of Helani. And yes, that O-line struggled last season. Again, the worst rushing yards per game and per an attempt since 1993, but they do have some experience under their belt, and with Helani back, I got to figure that the running game is going to do a little bit better and help Bachmeier take a little bit of pressure off of him at the least. And I think Shakir is going to have a big game in this one. I said it earlier. I'm going 8 catches for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think the Boise State Broncos are going to score 38 points. The over-under for this one, 68.5. Again, UCF favored by 4. So we'll see if that's good enough for Boise State to come out victorious. 38 points for Boise State. Let's go over that UCF offense. Again, head coach Gus Malzahn coming over from Auburn into Orlando as Josh Heupel moves to the SEC, where Gus Malzahn was, of course, from. He goes to Tennessee. So UCF's offense, Gus Malzahn's going to have a pretty good one to work with. Dillon Gabriel last year, 5th in the FBS in passing yards with 3,570, 32 touchdowns, just 4 interceptions. So he is all about ball security. And the thing about Dillon Gabriel, man, he's just going to take what the defense gives him. He'll take the short routes. He'll take what's there, take what's open. And then as he lulls you to sleep, then he'll go over the top. He is very good at doing that. In fact, number 1 in the FBS at doing that. 35 times he completed passes of 20 yards or more in 2020. So Dillon Gabriel, not just a dink and dunk kind of guy. He can definitely throw the ball over the top. No, there's gonna be no question marks about Gabriel. There were question marks about Gabriel going into last season when he was taking place of McKenzie after that gruesome injury. But this time around, there's going to be no question marks with Gabriel. He is obviously solid and very, very good. The biggest question mark for me for UCF on offense is that they are now without their top wide receiver, Marlon Williams, who averaged 130 yards per game in 2020. So that is a big, big loss at the receiver position. Can anybody at all fill that slot? They're going to try to fill it with Jalen Robinson, along with a Tennessee, a Notre Dame, and again, an Auburn transfer. So UCF going strong from the Power 5 schools in the transfers portal, as I mentioned earlier, particularly at this wide receiver position. The top 2 rushers for the Golden Knights last season both graduated, so they're going to be going through a slew of running backs to see who the best option is there. Bentavious Thompson, the senior at UCF, figures to be the main guy, but they have a lot of talented guys behind him, most notably Mark Anthony Richards, also an Auburn transfer, and Northwestern transfer Isaiah Bowser. As a Michigan fan, I know Bowser very well. He's a very good running back. Not really my style of running back, not very elusive, not very versatile, but is a bruiser, and it's going to pound you to death. So he'll be a nice addition there, especially in short yardage situations. The Boise State defense, again, Andy Avalos is a defensive-minded guy. He figures to make them a lot better. They had just 2 interceptions in 7 games last season. That's not very good. You want to turn the ball over if you're on defense. And the starting cornerbacks are both gone, so they too are going to be thin in the secondary. Both teams figure to have a lot of passing yards in this game with thin secondaries and very good receivers and quarterbacks. Avalos, as I mentioned, was a defensive coordinator from 2016 to 2018. That defense took a big step down without him, and he figures to bring them back to prominence, hopefully, but now he has to take care of both sides of the ball. He's head coach of everything, if you didn't know. Riley Wimpy is an excellent tackler at linebacker for Boise State. He has 7.5 tackles per loss in 2020. The problem is the linebacking corps and the defensive line, they're just not getting enough done. They're not getting enough done there. They got to make bigger plays, and you're really going to have to against Gabriel, who, you know, if you let him stand in the pocket for too long, he will do full damage on you. Defensive line for Boise State is absolutely stacked with talent and experience, so they have the capability. We'll just see if they can make it happen this season as opposed to last. So, here's the final questions for this game that I have. I talked about both teams being extremely thin in secondary. Both are very good on the offensive side of the ball, particularly on the edges and at the quarterback position. So, first question is, what quarterback is going to take advantage of that situation? If you're looking, I'm taking Gabriel over Bachmeier in terms of talent, but because there's so many question marks for UCF at the wide receiver position, losing a guy who got 130 yards per reception last season and losing both of their running backs to graduation, there's a lot of new voids there. But then the question mark for Boise State is that offensive line. The worst, technically, statistically, since 1993. So, man, it's going to be interesting who shows up for who. And, of course, the other question is, what will Boise State do on the road in the East? Now, I said they kind of didn't have a problem with Florida State, but that was Florida State. That was a Willie Taggart coach team they didn't have a lot of confidence in their coach. They knew they were in trouble last season, or that season, and, you know, it wasn't a great Florida State team. So, at the end of the day, Boise State was down in that game 31-19 at the half. They had to rally for a 17-0 lead in the second half to win 36-31, and you can't do that against UCF. You fall behind by 12 points at the half against UCF, it's going to be a lot harder to come back in the bounce house in Orlando, Florida. So who do I have winning? Well, I said Boise State was going to score 38 points. The over-under is 68.5, so that means that if I got UCF winning, I have them scoring a boatload of points. Do I or don't I have that happening? I don't. I think they're going to score a lot of points, 35 to be exact. 38-35 is going to be the final score, in my opinion. Boise State gets it done on the road all the way from Idaho to Florida. 73 total points. I'm taking the over, and I'm taking Boise State to win outright. I think it's going to happen. It's got it written all over it, doesn't it? UCF has Gus Malzahn, a big name, and they're at home, so everybody's probably going to be pointing the money towards UCF. I'm taking Boise State to get it done with their first-year coach because of that experience. 16 guys there, and I think that offensive line is going to be much improved, and the return of Helani is going to be a big deal for Boise State. They're going to outscore UCF in this one. It's going to be an exciting one. I can't wait for it. I can't wait for the 2021 season in general. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing. This is On Tap Sports. We cover all the sports all the time, but primarily football is our main focus, and it's football season, baby. It's here. We'll see you in later videos. Take care. God bless. Have a great day.